in what I'm hoping is going to be a number of these conversations with two wonderful people. Today we're going to be talking about AI in, like I say, this first in the series of what we're calling clear thinking. I'm Andy Howell. I'm the CEO of Deep Clear. We're going to try and change the world of management consultancy and give power to businesses so that they can truly find their way in this overly complex world we live in. So today, yeah, like I say, we're going to talk about the subject of AI. I have two wonderful people to join me to discuss this, both from very different walks of life. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they'll do a much better job than I will. So, Cassandra, over to you.
Thank you, Andy. So I am the founder of AIQ Nexus, and I'm an AI implementation consultant. And then I'm also the head of technology enablement for NetMonkeys. And my background's mostly been in financial services in London, working with AI and technologies. But I left kind of about a year ago and started my own business in the Midlands with the idea of supporting SMEs who perhaps don't have access to the skills or the knowledge around AI and help them on their AI journeys. And over to Kate.
Yeah, Kate.
Hi. So I'm Kate Cooper-Fay. I am CEO of Cooper-Fay Harris, and I am founder. I'm not too sure what my title is at the minute of Deep Clear. So.
Product evangelist, chief evangelist.
There you go. So an interesting one. So I'm a corporate lawyer by background, and essentially, I'm not a techie at all. I don't really understand AI other than I go, can you make it do this, please? And some wonderful people around me actually do make it happen. So that's kind of me. So this could be an interesting conversation. So yeah, thanks, Andy.
No worries. So okay, we talk about all this stuff in sort of boozy pubs and all sorts of other things around the place. And I know, Kate, we've discussed a lot of this in the past, and Cassandra, we've certainly had a good chat about this in the past. So the first question, I think this is probably on a lot of people's minds at the moment, because there's just so much information out there. Where do you turn? What do you look at? Who do you get to help you? What do you get to help you? So AI is there as a tool that we can all use, but how to be, fundamentally, I'm not sure people necessarily know how to use it. So how much guidance and support should AI give to businesses? And what are the key risks and opportunities when we're looking at AI in this sort of framed world that we live in? So Cassandra, I'm going to come to you first, and then we can have a bit of banter as we go through it, I'm sure.
I think there's some obvious ones that people often talk about, things you have to be careful of, things like hallucinations if you're using Gen AI and things like that. But also it depends on in how you're using it, because it has so many strengths in everyday life of things like guidance. So people use it for personal therapy and things like that. It can really help to have that other side of someone to talk to, even just simply writing down all your ideas and someone coming back and going, okay, have you thought about, and just pushing those boundaries for you a little bit more. It's really good in those senses, but I think we have to be aware of how some things are trained. We're using existing data all the time, and the way Gen AI works is by predicting on a statistic level what should come next. It doesn't have any true understanding of what you asked, and I think that's always important to remember as well. This isn't a business consultant you're talking to. This is someone or something that has read everything that's been written on the internet.
Yeah.
So it's very good at standing by your side, and I think this is where the word co-pilot that's come out has been so strong. It's because that's where it should sit. It's not there to pick up the essential side of your job, which is the reason you're employed to do your job. It's there to help you do that and pick up those menial tasks. I think proposing where it sits is very important and context for people. I know it depends on your personality and whether or not you go, nah, copy paste into ChatGPT and copy paste back out again. Those people existed beforehand, they just had different tools. But I think in how much guidance you give a business, it always should be your business. You should never let it tell you what your dream is or anything like that. I think the passion and everything like that still needs to come from within you. So I think you have to have a guideline somewhere along the lines of how much is it telling you what your business should be versus how do you achieve what task you're trying to achieve in that moment. is quite difficult on a human level to try and identify yourself as well. It's quite interesting.
It can't identify your own business North Star for you. You need to kind of do that yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
I absolutely agree with that. There's I saw saying it was actually Sam Altman that was saying it. So, you know, whatever your views of him are. And he was actually saying, you know, the reality is for years to come, humans will still be attributed with, you know, this human did this, because actually, yeah, whether it's a book or a movie or something like that that's being created, it's not being created completely. It always has to be human led. It has to be human finished, if you like. And I think that's the important bit. Like, don't just allow it to decide for you, because, like, to your point, it's not got the context about your business, right?
No.
It doesn't know about the world that you live in. You can't just have the same answer in 10 different places in the world, in 10 different locations, with 10 different types of customers, 10 different types of weather. You know, it's all that kind of stuff. Wouldn't you say, Kate?
Yeah. I mean, I'm so relieved to hear the word co-pilot, because that's made me breathe a little bit. So I think, you know, Andy, we've had a lot of conversations. I make no secret of the fact this frightens the life out of me in many, many ways. It's saved my bacon in many others when I suffered really badly with RSI and chat's written on my emails. So thanks, ChatGPT. But I think for me, you know, what's really interesting is, you know, you look at businesses, and I absolutely think, you know, AI has a huge role in organizations and helping those organizations actually really optimize and, you know, and actually thrive and all of that great stuff. But I think for me, it's all about balance, as of all these things. And when you look at businesses, and it always makes me die, you know, if we were to put our sort of very pragmatic head on, we all know that we should run a business very, very pragmatically. But ultimately, a business is about people, and it's about our employees, it's about our suppliers, it's about our customers, it's about our community, which is actually emotional. And I think one of the things that I think we need to really think about, and again, would love your views on this, Cassandra, is how do we keep those human-centric values aligned with the amazing tools that we can get through using AI? So I think that's one of the core things for me. But when I think about what does AI bring, and again, some of the reasons why we've clearly embraced this, and it's finally meaning that we can bring Deep Clear to life, you know, it actually does really support those decision-making tools. But I think it is a decision-making support tool, not a decision-making tool. You know, and we've all seen some pretty bad press recently. I won't mention names, but about management consultants literally using ChatGPT to do huge consulting projects. But of course, that's just what's coming from ChatGPT. If it's not coming from here, then actually you're just relying on somebody else. And of course, that brings me to the other thing that concerns me a little. I know we've got this covered, is around that data risk as well, because essentially AI is only giving you what's put in. So of course, the quality of what comes out is, you know, it's essentially like everyone's CRM system, right? You know, it's as good as what you put in as to what comes out. So, you know, so I think there's that real balance there about how we manage that. But I think, you know, again, when I look at, obviously, as you know, Andy, you know, my whole thing and everything that I do is all around the customer, whether that be your internal customer, your external customer. And again, I think, you know, AI for me can be such a profoundly amazing tool at helping us deliver exceptional customer and user experiences as well. But we mustn't forget that the humanity piece also has to come into play. So I think it should be a supporting tool, not a driving tool, or not a leading tool. Maybe a driving tool, actually. Maybe I've got that wrong. More a driving tool rather than a leading tool.
I'd almost see that bit. Sorry to jump in. I was going to say it's that difference between being a curator and the sort of creator. Yeah. And I think there's a really important bit here, which is I kind of, you know, I talk about it badly sometimes, because I think that there's a lot of people are potentially using it in a potentially quite a lazy way, without necessarily thinking about the repercussions of it, or not using their brains enough to actually make it work really well afterwards. And I call it sort of shortcutters. I sort of call them the shortcutters. And it's this like shortcut economy that, oh, it's all right, I'll just get that to do it. I won't put any thought process into it. So I don't really know why it said what it said, because I haven't really thought about the question and I haven't really thought about the outcome, but at least I've done something, right? And that's great. You've done something, but is it the right thing? Have you curated the question and put enough thought process into the questions you're asking things so that actually when you get an output, you can then challenge that output? And to me, that's one of the most important things, right? Challenging the AI. It's not a fully baked consciousness of its own
No.
yet,
Yeah.
right? Wouldn't you say?
No, completely agree, Andrew. And I think this comes back to what you were saying, Kate, about the human aspects. Like a example I always use with clients when I go visit them is you don't hire a business analyst to make you Power BI reports. That's a necessary evil of their job. What you hire them for is actually telling a story with your data. So you could build an all whiz bang analytics platform using AI and give it to the CEO, but the questions the CEO is going to be asking it are not going to be the right ones. You're not going to get out of it what you want by having the data analyst sat there. Their role is to tell a story with your data and challenge it and understand what that question should be based on the environment they're in. And I think, Kate, going back to your human aspect of it, I think a lot of this you shouldn't be looking at the technology to put that in place for you. It's the culture and the organization that do it, and it's the leadership styles. They're what you need to be focusing on. AI is a task monkey. It goes out and does things that you need it to do in order to achieve something, but you need to define what that achievable thing is first.
Yeah.
And it should come very much from leadership. One, recognizing that AI isn't there to replace your staff. Anyone who heads out with we can get rid of this department and put AI in, I think is incredibly short-sighted and will fail in the long term. Because the environment changes, the market changes, customer needs change. Who's going to change with it? Who's going to be keeping an eye on it? Who's going to be maintaining those relationships and building new ones for you when your market changes? So I think a heavy weight of what we need to be focusing on is great. We have our engineers developing the technology and getting us from A to B of what needs to be done, but leadership styles need to also be kind of held accountable for, and that enablement of a culture of innovation, a culture of learning new skills and adapting to markets and things. That's the hard bit, almost, from what I teach. That's the getting people to understand and contextualizing it in their mind that actually this isn't necessarily a technology problem, this is a people problem. And how do you keep that going, and how do you look after people? That's a really difficult side to it all, and we're often undervalued.
It's like this, as you were saying that, it just reminded me that I think Klarna just came out a few months ago and saying that like they've eradicated 25% of their workforce and that it's all done by AI now. But then, as you were also saying that, I was like, Christ, of course, like AI is basically built on a fundamental constant, right? But the world isn't built on a constant. So actually,
what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? Like, so actually, I then wrote down this kind of like leadership foresight. Leadership foresight can't be baked into an AI at this stage. Maybe one day we'll have an AI that can see, into the future, and that'd be wonderful. That kind of like spatial, business future telling or whatever. There's a guy called Mike Pell who works at, I think he runs Microsoft Garage actually, and he did a fantastic TED talk recently, and he was like, I've built a time machine, and it's this concept of being able to kind of think about all those elements using data and analysis and data analytics to be able to show that a visualization of the future. But again, leadership foresight, fascinating. The thing which I think sort of came up there is management consultancies. Now, Kate, I know you've had a past as a management consultant. We're still doing stuff in that space. So I think we're all doing consultancy work in that, in that sense. There's a risk potentially that AI could replace the consultant. Now, I'm going to sort of land something in a slightly obtuse way, because I think it sort of paints a picture which I feel, it's unfortunate that some of the consultancies are getting this rap, and there's consultants have got a history of, they pay you pay them to tell you what you already know, and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine. But I think it was my dad actually sent me a tweet the other day, and he said it was quite amusing, and it was a chap on a plane, and he had a consultant from a major consultancy next to him, and they were writing an entire, not proposal, a kind of a whole pitch back to a client, and it was all being done by ChatGPT. And it just was like, wow, okay, that's an incredible development, that essentially a client is paying for what they think is billable brain hours, and actually they're getting the billable brain hours, but they're actually being given a sort of a very quick and dirty shortcut version. And that to me just felt fundamentally completely wrong. So I mean, like, how do we talk about that? Where do we even start? Okay.
Well, I've got some interesting thoughts, and actually, just kind of, I'm going to flip back to something you mentioned earlier as well, and possibly a little bit of a plug for Deep Clear here. So apologies.
Fine,
but
absolutely fine.
Actually, you know what's really interesting, and I was once told by somebody very famous in corporate world, a major leader of a huge organisation. He said to me, the quality of our business is a direct correlation to the quality of the questions that we ask. And I think this is one of the things when, you know, around all of this, and back to my thoughts earlier about how you need to keep the humanity in all of this as well. AI is only going to give us the outputs if we give it the great input. So if we're not asking the right questions of AI, we're not going to get the right output. So we can go and do an amazing piece of management consulting work using AI. And I know we can do that, right? But actually, is it going to be any good? It's only going to be as good as the questions that we ask it. So if that consultant is not putting the right questions into whatever platform they're using, we're not going to get the right answers. But equally, those answers are only part of the story. It's what you then do with those answers that actually is the key. So as much as I appreciate that, you know, consultants can go in and they're doing all of this and they can put all of this great stuff into the various AI platforms and get amazing things out, how do they know it's right? Because it's only basically based on what they put in, what, dare I say it, it's been searched on the web. But is it right for that business? Is it right for that culture? Is it right for that organization's growth plan? Because again, as we know, you know, dependent on what the strategy is for that organization, actually the outputs and the implementation of those outputs will be very, very different. And I think this is some of the things that, you know, really need to be clearly thought about as organizations are going down and using something like chat to do all of this great stuff. Yeah, it's great. And it might stimulate thinking. I think if it stimulates thinking, that's when it's useful. If you're asking it to do it for you, I'd be really cautious. I'm not sure I even answered the question there, but anyway.
No, I think you did. I think you did. Yeah. What do you think, Cassandra?
I think you're aiming at the right place there. If you can't teach, I'm sure it's the same for you. When you go into a business, you usually have conversations with 5, 6, 7 different people to actually get the feel of a business, to understand the different points of views, because they all have their own responsibilities, their own things they go off and do, their own teams they manage. So you need to get all of those points of view together to then go step back and go, this is the path forward. Whereas you're saying with AI, you're putting in a limited amount of information. It doesn't have context of the business culture. It doesn't have context of the weird little conversations you had while you're making coffee. It doesn't pick up on all those nuances. So it's got a very siloed view on cold, hard facts and figures that you can put into it. And it goes, okay, this is what the next predictable step would be to do, based on the information you've put in. But it didn't hear about how, I know, one member of staff is actually nearing retirement, or they're about to go off and do something else. So you might be losing a key piece of the culture there, or key piece of knowledge, and you know that going forward. But the AI won't. Not unless we get into a state where everything is connected and everything is recorded. Data collection is a huge thing on this. And actually, what data are we collecting in order to feed into AI and we can translate into AI? What is it missing? What is it not seeing? And that's, I think, where true business consultancy comes in. Those people that can stand in and actually pick up on all these signals and go, okay, this is how it interprets into the outside world as well. That's where, you know, I think we've got a very long way to go before we reach a stage where we can start collecting all that information and translating it. We're not there yet for sure.
Well, I was going to say there's a sort of almost, I find myself talking to this quite a bit actually, and having been a sort of marketing and commercial person in a number of tech businesses and startups and stuff, I often find that whenever I'm dealing with suppliers or consultants, the biggest challenge I have as someone in a business, you know, I'm happy to accept this, is that I find it quite difficult to build a brief. So when you're building a brief for a problem that you're trying to understand, or you think that you've got a problem, and then you're sort of giving that half-baked brief to somebody who's then going to help you identify what that brief really needs to say, then are you really getting the outcome that you need from what then gets given to you. So I always say that the most difficult thing here is just really understanding what the problem is. So perhaps in terms of the sort of addendum to this question is, what's the future of management consultancy? And I kind of feel like certainly what a lot of AI can help do, if prompted in the correct way, if you kind of know how to almost interrogate yourself, if you were to ask it to interrogate you, how do you prompt it to do that, is in helping you to identify and find your way through to being able to build that brief so that you can actually brief a consultant, brief a supplier, brief a mentor, brief a non-exec, whatever it might be, to actually then give you that acute support you need. And that to me is, again, I'm not going to plug Deep Clear, but I feel like that's probably something that we would do quite well, which is why I also don't think we're necessarily a threat to management consultancy, because I don't think, kind of coming back to my open AI mention earlier, needing that human element we're always going to need that human element. And actually, I sort of perceive that, yes, AI will have this amazing, it's already having an amazing impact on a lot of people. But I think what will happen is that the sort of skill base of the shortcutting bit will disappear, and you'll get a much more sophisticated layer of practitioners. But you will always have that human element, and actually having the human touch in a lot of businesses will strangely become almost like the luxury service. That's where my head's at. I don't know.
Yeah, done right, it enables what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
That's kind of the aim of it.
Yeah, and I think, having essentially, in whatever form or another, done management consulting for the last 25 years of my life, actually, I think one of the key things to me, will it do away with the need for management consulting? Absolutely not. I think it becomes an outstanding support tool.
Absolutely.
And I think, but when I look back to, the projects that I've done over the years, the key thing for me with this is data. I've always said, you go into organizations, there is so much data in businesses, but no one does anything with it. So one of my jobs is I go in and I spend with a team of normally 20 odd people going through enormous amounts of data. And then through that data, we identify those common themes. That's where AI can help. AI can do that for us. And then we can take those common themes and do the clever stuff. And I've always kind of said, clients kind of, I think they get a little bit grumpy because when we're not in the office and they're still paying us, because they think that actually, we're only adding any value when we're in the office. In the office, we are going through reams and reams of data. The clever stuff comes back when we're in a dark room somewhere going, right, what do we do with it? So I think it will essentially speed up the process, which I think will be amazing. And I think it will help validate a lot quicker some of those key things, which we can then take away and go, right, great, we've now got that. Now, what do we need to do with it? Because that's the clever bit, and that's what requires the brain power. The trading through data is just time, and an awful lot of time. And of course, in that consistency in data as well, when you go into businesses, because it's so inconsistent, actually, when you're going through thousands and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of different data pieces, chat can very quickly, or something of that ilk, or some AI tool or something can very quickly go, actually, these are the common themes, and these are the inconsistent nuances as well, by the way, that it can find really, really quickly. Us human beings are only human. We can't necessarily do that as well as AI.
No, I think you touched on two really good points there, and the two positions that the world can kind of find its way on this is, one, consultants can use it to aid themselves. Like you say, you can have something, you can build yourself a tool and help you digest all this information and surface it to yourself faster.
Yeah.
But also, if something out there would put something into businesses which could organize their data to make it ready for someone to come in and do this as well, and have that in their tool set. So it's kind of two avenues to put it there: one for the consultant to upskill themselves and get used to this stuff, but then for a business to have something in its tool set which can get it ready for a business consultant, whatever consultant might be coming in, because it's about conveying that information outward is really hard.
Can I do this? Welcome to Deep Clear.
I was going to say, well, it's an interesting point, because I guess that what we're sort of discussing there, and I know we alluded to it, we had a little chat about it before we even started this conversation, which is, AI is one of those things that, especially in larger organizations, that can really help when it's built in the right way to minimize all that data into distilled chunks. But that's great if you're a massive organization. You've got like a team of people going on it, and you've got your Microsoft, and you've got your BI cubes, and you've got all of your accounting information, and you've got your ERP. Great, fantastic. But then you kind of go, that's a very small number of businesses, right? Really, really small. If you take the UK, it's probably about 3% of businesses or something in the UK. So you've got this whacking great big economy outside that, which is probably more on sort of spreadsheets and bits and pieces. So actually finding that really deep, deep analytical data becomes a massive job to itself. And I know I said I wouldn't plug deeply, but I actually think this is where this is where it sort of does come in, because actually, how do you serve the mass, general business public, as it were, who are just trying to do the sort of day to day, and actually they don't want to find out the forecast of their forensic accounting that deals with X, Y, and Z. They just want to know, what are the couple of things that I can do today which might help inch forward my business and make my life a little less complicated. And I think, tools that are utilizing AI, or at least bringing in some just more simplified question sets, more simplified ways of understanding where you are, a barometer, a wayfinding tool. I think that's something that AI is obviously going to be able to help a lot with, and hopefully through series like these conversations, we can expose some of those routes. But there's one final thing I wanted to touch on before we close up our conversation, because it's just been really amazing, and it's the concept of I don't know. So I think we can all agree that it's become very, very acceptable in the last sort of decade for people to go, it's okay that you don't know, we're going to find out together. That's great, wonderful. It's very emotional, it's very, very open, it's very empathetic. That's brilliant. I think it's a fantastic way that business has gone. But when you add that to fail fast, learn quick, and all these kind of terminologies, and then you also look at AI, are we potentially going towards a future where, given the world is incredibly competitive, uh, you actually want to make sure that you have a leader who does know, and the tools that are available will allow those leaders to, if you like, always know the answer. And I just think, how do we approach that? What do we think of what I've just said? Because we're all founders at the same time, and I personally sit here and I go, God, we've got this tech, and we've got to build a business, and especially in the early stages, the people that join you want to know that you know the answers, because they're risking their lives on what you're doing. So the concept of going and turning around and saying, I don't know all the answers, is an interesting one. So how do we do that? How do we use AI? How do we tackle this kind of interesting question? Where do we go?
I think it depends what lens you're coming through on that one, because you're right. As a founder of a business, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know where you're heading. At least you need to know what direction you're trying to go in. But I think it depends on what you're doing, depends on how you approach that, because we talk about AI as if it's something that's mature in here and, oh, look, isn't it great? But 2 years ago, very, very few people knew what it was or what it was capable of. It's a very short time frame. And I think no matter who you are, whether you're an exec on a business, you're a founder, you're a parent, it's hit us incredibly fast and incredibly hard. And learning at the speed you need to learn at in order to keep up with it from whatever you're doing is difficult, because not only is there an awful lot going on and we've moved incredibly quickly, there's an awful lot of noise out there. If you open up LinkedIn, every post of mine at the moment is someone who's an expert in AI and trying to sell me something. Every event I go to there's an AI that can solve my problem. Here's a subscription fee. But out of all of that lot, what actually works and what should be used is quite a difficult concept. So I think from the perspective of knowing what it is you're trying to achieve, you should be the person in the know. If you're not, I think you need to question yourself on what am I doing and why am I doing it. But I think if you're building something, you're developing something, I think you have to say, at this stage we're at, I don't know is perfectly acceptable to say, because next week it's going to be different. If you look at the last kind of 3-4 weeks of development in the open world, you've got I think the voice for OpenAI, ChatGPT has now come out. I think that's now public to people. A lot of people seem to have that voice control. They brought out a new model called Strawberry, which could do maths and could do a lot better reasoning. But then only a few days later, Google brought something out that's now better at maths than OpenAI's one. So the speed at which you have to, the amount of reading you have to do to stay current, I think in that world, it's perfectly all right to go, let me go check my sources. Because, I haven't switched my laptop on for 3 hours. For all I know, there's something else that's happened. So I think it's you need to put yourself in a position of actually, can I know what's going on here? If you're a leader of a big business and go, right, we need to do something in AI, I think you have to take the stance of, I don't know right now, but I'm going to go figure it out. And in order to figure it out, I need X, Y, Z. So not necessarily saying I don't know and going at your team's meeting, but going, this is my plan to find out. And I think that's kind of what you're leaning to there is, we've got a lot of tools that are available to us now, but we also have to give context to the maturity of where we are. A lot of people don't know what they're doing really. They'll claim they do, but they don't. And the technology is changing. And I think, I can't remember who said it the other day, but if we stopped right now developing any AI, it's still going to take us another 10 years to implement everything we've already done in the last 2 years. So our world is changing around us pretty swiftly as well. So I think, if you're asking, is it okay to say I don't know, it's perhaps okay to say I don't know what I'm going to do about this particular situation right now, but I do know where I'm going. I do know what I'm trying to achieve. I do know what my target is. So I think you have to be careful on what is okay to say I don't know and on what isn't. That's, I think, you have to contextualize it a little bit, and it does depend on the role you play as well. Because, you say, as a leader of a business, you need to know where you're going.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on is it okay to say I don't know.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Kate?
I mean, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? So know, so okay. And I think, I think a lot depends on types of leaders, actually. So there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, but I'm a very inquisitive leader. So if I don't know, I kind of want to find out, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I can have the best plan and the best focus and the best direction in the world, and then something comes in sideways that in God's earth we could never have anticipated. And let's be honest, we've experienced a lot of that in the last 4 or 5 years, right? So so actually, we can only and there's a great thing, isn't there? And the whole sort of what sanity, only control what you can control, don't try and control what you can't control. So long as I know about the immediate things that are going on around me and I can manage that, and if there's things I don't know, I can say, well, I don't know, but I'm actually going to put risk mitigation in to enable us to actually identify this, and that's okay. And we all do it, whenever we're doing our own business plans and our own structures, and we're all going, right, okay, so this is what we do know. What don't we know that could hit us in the various 4 corners? And actually we can only guess, and you can pretty much guarantee that the one that does we haven't even thought about. So so I think there's so I do think it's okay to say that we don't know. And I think we'd be pretty arrogant if we did say we knew everything, because let's be honest, none of us do. We're all learning. And as you just said there, Cassandra, we can't even catch up with what we've got in front of us at the minute, never mind where it's going to be in 3 hours time. So I think we're always going to be in that place of I don't know, because we're never going to blink and know, because if we do know, we're going to be a genius, right? And we're going to take over the world. So and actually, and I think it would be really boring if I knew, because that would stop me learning, and every day's a school day. And actually the only way that companies innovate, people grow, people develop, is if they don't know.
Yeah, I sort of totally agree with all of that. If I allude to the younger version of me, 18 years ago, starting a business and trying to figure out what on earth I was meant to be doing, flying by the seat of my pants, I would say the thing which led to me ultimately failing miserably over the course of the next sort of 3 or 4 years was absolutely 100% my ego. My ego completely killed my business. And I even had people around me asking me to ask them for help. But I was like, no, I'm the leader of this business. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, 100% know what I'm doing. I'm apparently driving this straight into the ground. Like, this is what we're doing. So I think, the world has changed so fundamentally now, in a sense that I think the younger version of me had I been around now, it would have been more about just this huge proliferation of almost ego busting advice on the bit which goes before getting the advice, which is, how do I ask for advice? And how acceptable is it that I ask for advice? And that being a lot more open. So I think for me, this whole landscape that we have in front of us now is just this wonderfully open way of being able to get rid of ego, access the right information, really allowing yourself to educate whilst questioning, I loved your point there, Kate, about like every day's a school day. You know, we're always learning. I think that's the piece for me as well, which is just so fundamentally changed that actually I enjoy learning about stuff I don't know about, as opposed to being like, well, I don't know about that, therefore I'm just going to ignore it. So, and I
Yeah.
think that for me is where obviously the world is gone.
So
So,
we
okay.
have a wonderful real life example. I won't mention his name because I haven't asked him if I can. But you know, we obviously we're working with an outstanding ultra high net worth individual who has recently exited his company for a couple of billion. And he shared a wonderful LinkedIn post just recently of him going off on his holiday with a suitcase full of books. All business books. He's still learning. He surrounds himself by great entrepreneurs and all of that jazz, because again, and he's done, he could be retired on the beach, you know, but no, absolutely wants to keep learning, keep innovating, because then he can keep giving back. So, you know, and it's that mindset, isn't it? And I think, you know, if anyone gets to a point where they, you know, they go, actually I know everything, as you said, that's the arrogance, right? And actually if you do that, once you get to that point, you might as well turn off the lights and go home, because you stop growing, your business stops growing, your team stops growing, we all stop learning, and then
It's just
vice versa.
boring.
Exactly.
Yeah, boring.
Exactly.
Less about I don't know, more about I need to know. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And as I said right at the start of this conversation, AI frightens the life out of me. It fascinates me because I don't understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Okay.
I just think it's really clever.
Yeah. So I think that's been a good conversation, guys. Thank you so much for doing it, and hopefully we've been able to deliver some sort of clear thinking to the people that may or may not watch it. So anyway, right, we'll call it there. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Absolutely. Good seeing you both.